My name is Jorge Madrigal, and today we're going to be talking about subnetting. Our goals for today are we're going to understand what subnetting is. We're going to learn how to read subnet mask. We're going to learn how to calculate subnets, usable host ranges, identify network ID and broadcast address. We'll also see how devices communicate based on subnetting. So we'll look at how devices communicate when they're within the same subnet versus when they're in a different subnet. And we're also going to get some hands-on practice with Cisco Packet Tracer. So make sure you have that downloaded so you can follow along. If you don't have it downloaded, it's okay. You can still follow along, but it'll be much more helpful for you if you follow along with just the configuration and everything that I'll be doing in Cisco Packet Tracer. Let's go ahead and get started. This is going to be a series. So for the first part, we're going to just cover what subnetting is. And then the other two parts, we're going to look at just how communication looks like based on devices being in the same subnet versus when they're in a different subnet. So let's go ahead and get started. I always like to start with analogies. Analogies are probably the best way to understand a concept. So let's think of a company building, and companies, they have different departments, right? A company will have HR, sales, customer service, accounting, different departments. Let's imagine that all these departments shared one floor and one office in a building. So let's just imagine that. It would be super chaotic. You just have people talking over each other, people overhearing each other's meetings. There'd be echoes in Zoom meetings, Google Meets meetings. It'd be just super chaotic because you have all these people just in one single space, right? Imagine, just 100 people talking over each other. That's just chaos. That's just super chaotic. So what could we do to make things a little less chaotic is we can organize the departments to each have their own floor. So we have a company building, we can have each department have its own floor. And if an employee from one department wants to communicate with another employee from a different department, they can take the elevator or stairs to communicate with the employee. So how does this apply to networking, right? Where's the connection to networking? What is what? So the company building, think of it as the large IP network. The departments, think of them as the subnetworks. And the employees, you can think of them as the devices on the network. You have your computers, laptops, phones. All these devices exist in a network. We'll say that the employees are the devices in the network. And the elevator / stairs, the elevator stairs, that's going to be the router. And that's going to allow communication between different subnets. Routers is what allows us to communicate between different subnetworks. That's when routers come in. They allow it for communication. You're going to see that a little bit later in the series when we go into just communication when devices are in different subnetworks. So dividing the company with each department having its own floor, its own subnetwork, this creates more organization. It makes things more manageable. You don't have people talking over each other. You have people that are able to, take virtual meetings. They're not overhearing each other's conversations. There's no echoes, right? So essentially, subnetting is just breaking down big networks, hence subnetworks. So you have just networks. You have a large network that's divided into smaller logical networks. And we always use subnets, just short for subnetworks. It's the same thing. Each subnet functions like a smaller independent network. So you have this large independent network, and then you have these smaller networks that function as their own independent network. So we've broken down this large network into subnetworks. And why do we subnet? Well, it allows for more efficient use of IP addresses. It also improves network performance and enhances security. It breaks down large networks into smaller, more manageable parts, facilitating better routing and traffic management. And this is just a visual of what subnetting can look on the left side, you have a switch with 4 laptops and then a router. And then on this side, you have still the same number of devices, but now and still the same router, but now you have 2 switches, and um, 2 of the devices are connected to one switch, and then another 2 devices connected to another switch, and then they are within their own subnetwork. So this is one subnetwork, and this is another subnetwork. Here, we just have one network where all these 4 devices are in, which is here we have these 2 devices that are in their own network, and then these 2 devices that are in their own network, and we have the router that's allowing for that communication. Here, within this side, the devices can talk to each other. There's no need for a router if they wanted to communicate within this local area network. But if they wanted to communicate with a device outside of this, then that's when the router would come in. And as you can see here, the router here allows for communication between these 2 subnetworks. If this laptop wants to talk laptop over here, it can't do that. It's going to need the router to go ahead and communicate. It's going to use the router as a way of communicating to that device.